Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're well. Now, here it's the morning, and waking up, I could hear the rain coming down outside. And when I opened the curtains and looked out, yes, the rain was absolutely falling out of the sky. It was a grey day. And at that point, I just remembered an experience that I had some years ago, and I really wanted to share it with you because the one thing that I got from this experience was that even at times when you feel weak or you feel that you're not able to do something, the power of the mind and the power that you have can't be underestimated. So, my story. Some years ago, after being diagnosed with MS, I didn't have any physical challenges. So, I was still able to get on my bike and cycle to work. And one of the places that I freelanced was a really lovely showroom, probably about a 4 or 5 mile cycle from where I lived. And I remember this particular day, I'd got into the showroom, and shortly after getting in, it was just like the morning that I'm talking about, where the clouds just covered the sky and the rain came down. And it rained and it rained and it didn't stop. I remember sitting at my desk and looking out onto this absolutely completely drenched street, and the rain did not stop all day. I remember thinking that I hoped that it would stop, and I'd have a break at least at the time of having to go home, because it wasn't the kind of rain that even the most seasoned cycler would want to be in. And of course, the whole energy on the street was not great either. You know, you had motorists that were tooting their horns, getting impatient with each other. There were near misses and accidents. It was just really awful. So I really hoped that this would die down before I was ready to get my stuff on and come home. But no, by the time it was time to shut the business, the showroom, it was still raining, and I thought, okay, I'm going to wait for maybe another half hour, see whether the rain stops, but it didn't. And I knew that at that point I would just have to bite the bullet and get on and get my things on. And fortunately for me, I did have some waterproof things. To an extent, I knew that the waterproof gear that I was wearing wouldn't do a great deal, but at least it would help me to some degree. So I got everything on, I got my bits on, and I cycled, and yep, I got completely drenched. By the time I got home, I could feel that the rain had got right through into my skin. And it was that kind of rain that was so heavy that when it came down, it felt as if it was piercing your skin. So I was so glad to get out of it. And when I got in, I peeled off all my wet clothes and ran a really nice hot bath. I put tea lights, little candles around the bath, and I was just getting ready and looking forward to just soaking in the bath and just soaking away that horrible, rainy, wet, damp, dull energy that I had had around me for pretty much all day. So I got in the bath. It's a slightly bigger bathtub, and also the taps are on the side, so I felt as if I was in a small pool. It was lovely. And this is the reason why when we did the restoration on our home, we got this bath, because of the shape of it, because you could get 2 people in it quite easily, and because you didn't have any interruptions. The taps and all the other things were away from you, so you could really just put your head back, put your feet out and relax. And this is what I did. Probably about 20 or 30 minutes in, just listening to some soft music, looking at the flickering of the tea lights. I must have drifted off, or at least I was very relaxed. I remember waking up and the water was underneath my neck, which okay, there was so much water in the bath. So I tried to move myself, to push myself up a little bit, because I realised that I was sinking into the bath. And this is when I realised that I couldn't move. I tried to lift my legs just to push myself up a little bit, but I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel my hands. And at that point, I could feel my body sliding further into the bath. And the length of the bath meant that my feet were not touching the end. By now, the water was under my chin. And I remember this feeling of not being able to move, but at the same time feeling like I was disappearing into the water, and realising that without being able to move, there was a chance that I could drown, but not knowing why I couldn't move, just really not understanding why suddenly I couldn't move. I knew that my husband and my daughter were probably on the same floor, in my daughter in her room, my husband doing some music or something. So I tried to call them, and all that came out of my mouth was a whisper. Even my throat, I couldn't talk, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't talk, why I couldn't move. It was the scariest experience for me, and all the while I could feel myself sinking. In fact, the more I became anxious, the quicker my breath became, the quicker I slipped further into the water. And I knew that I needed to do something. I knew that I needed to stop myself from going into the water any further, because by now the water was around my lips. It was underneath my nose, and I still couldn't move. I started to cry because I imagined that I was going to be found in the water, drowned. My family blaming themselves for not knowing what was going on. I mean, how could they know? And this was the place where I remember closing my eyes and visualizing being able to reach the chain, the plug and the chain that was to my left. Just really, really visualizing, trying to imagine that I had it. And it seemed like forever that I was doing this, just closing my eyes and visualizing, and trying not to think about the water that was right underneath my nose, and knowing that if I let that water get in to my nose, I would then start the panic, and that would be the end of it. So there was this side of me that knew that I really had to shut certain things off around me. I had to shut off this feeling of the water underneath my nose, and I had to think about and visualize as strongly as possible the energy of pulling or touching this bath, this chain, and pulling it. I remember that feeling when I had my little finger touching the chain, and then the rest of my hand, the rest of my fingers moving close to it as well. And then having enough strength to wrap it round my finger and just pull it. And the first time I pulled it, nothing happened. I didn't have the strength. I still felt really weak. Nothing was happening. But then I remember just breathing in again and pulling this chain again, and eventually the water draining away was the most exhilarating and emotionally moving sound. It wasn't over yet because I was still sliding away. And you see, now that I was crying with joy from actually releasing some of that water, reaching the plug, I had to hope that the water would drain away quicker than I was sliding into the water. And then eventually I was lying in an empty bathtub, crying, now feeling really cold, and my body and my muscles were starting to move again. I could feel my fingers and toes. I could feel the whole of my body. I was able to lift my legs again and lift my arm and push myself up. And I just sat there wondering what the hell happened. I don't know how long I was in that bath, but I can tell you that time didn't mean anything. And by the time I dried myself off and came out of that room and sat down, I remember speaking with my family and talking about the experience. And they didn't understand. And why would they? Because this was somebody who was fit and able, cycled around everywhere, was really strong, and couldn't get out of the bath. So what was happening to my body at this time that I wasn't aware of? Well, there is a part of the brain called the hypothalamus, and it controls our body temperature and it regulates it to make sure that our body functions properly, our body works in the right way. For those with an existing medical condition, the hypothalamus doesn't work so well. So it's not regulating temperature properly. The messages that are being sent are not being sent correctly, and in some cases are not sent at all. So you end up with a system that is not working, it's very slow to respond, and this is really dangerous. I am extremely grateful to be here, and I really don't say this lightly. And one thing that I'm really happy and understand is that despite the fact that my body wasn't working, despite the fact that there are things that I can't control with my health, with my condition, there was quite clearly something that I had all the control that I needed on, and that was my mind, the way that I was thinking, and my ability to visualize, which I feel was the thing that actually saved me. Being able to shut myself away from some of the thoughts that were going on in my body and focus on the things that I knew would help me was the reason why I'm able to share my video with you. There were a number of practical things that I learned from this experience. I don't have baths very often now, just simply because I don't tolerate the heat very much all these years later. But there are times when, your body aches and you want to have a soak. And in this particular position, I make sure that I don't lock the door. I let members of the family know that this is what I'm doing so that they can just keep a listen out for me if I need any help. I have a non-slip mat in the bottom of the bath so that when I'm sitting and I'm lying down and I'm soaking, I'm not sliding either. Regardless of what is going on in your life, sometimes when you feel that you haven't got the strength, you're not strong enough to do something, the mind is the most powerful thing that you possess, and you can decide how you use it. And in the case of visualizing, it can move mountains for you and put you in a place that saves you. The second thing I hope would be that my story has just reminded you to take extra care so that if you are somebody that has some challenges, You make sure that you prepare yourself so that whatever you do during the day, around the house or even outside, you can do it safely. So that's about it. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.